I don't think y'all can see me over the top of this. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to stand to the side because I can't see y'all. Talk a little bit about the SMA, the production and placement, cost comparison, and then I'm going to go through a summary. Is that better? Okay. And when I go through my presentation, I'm going to compare the SMA to our traditional mixes, and I have a pretty basic presentation just to kind of go through what an SMA is. I know the Bryan District, we've used it some. We haven't used it a lot because it is pretty much considered the premium mix and for expense and also the high quality materials that are used in it. And so we use it real selectively. And so basically the recipe for the SMA, you have a real good high quality aggregate. We tend to use our highest grade, the PG76 binders or the AR binder. It has a high asphalt content. We have to add mineral filler, and some of the things we add is fibers. And for those of y'all who've done PFC, you know that's an extra attachment onto the hot mix plant to be able to add those fibers. Lime can be added, warm mix additives, and then also the spec allows some recycled materials. And this is a comparison with the SMA, Super Pave, and our dense graded mixes. And you can see on here for the aggregates, the LA abrasion, the soundness, they have stricter requirements. It's a higher quality aggregate. And so it's going to be a more expensive aggregate. And I think Mike showed the slide with the differences in the aggregate pricing. And usually it's designed at 50 gyrations. You can drop down to 35 and go up to 100. For the ones we've had in the Bryan District, we've been between 35 and 50. We haven't gone above 50. It's designed with a stone-on-stone contact, similar to a PFC, if you're not familiar with it. Again, the gradation is similar to a PFC because of the way it's graded, and I'll have a graph here in a minute to show y'all that. It has high VMA. There's drain down concerns, which is why we use the fibers, again, similar to PFC. There's a Hamburg wheel test requirement, which is the same for all of our mixes. And then the SMA also has an overlay testing requirement to help with the cracking susceptibility. So this is the gradation, and you can see on here, this is our traditional dense graded mix, and this is the SMA. So it's much more gap graded, so you're going to have a lot more higher quality, larger aggregate than you will with the dense graded. The VMA requirements, typical around 14, 15, what we've been using forever. The super paves are a little bit higher, and then you can see on the SMA, it's a much higher VMA requirement. And this for placement, if you look at the thickness, because we have more coarse aggregate, your SMAD is going to be a similar lift thicknesses to your super pave C and your traditional dense graded C mixes. So if you need to look at the table that are in the spec books on the lift thicknesses, because if you use these, a C doesn't necessarily automatically replace a traditional C mix. And so think about how thick you're going to place it, and look at these charts that are in the spec book on the typical lift thicknesses to help you decide which is the best one to use for your application. So the common uses, like I said, it's a high quality mix. It uses the highest quality asphalt that we use, the PG76. It uses the highest quality aggregates that we have. So we tend to use it on our higher volume roads. Or if you have a surface mix with high demand, you have a lot of starting heavy truck traffic, something that's more susceptible to rutting. We use it there. And then we've also used it below the PFC. We have some old literature, Georgia, on their entire interstate system. That's how they design ours. On Interstate 45, we were using a cam mix, and then the PFC above it, and we've switched to the thin SMA, the 1-inch SMA, and then the PFC, because we had some problems with the cam mix being too dense. And if you trap moisture, it was steaming and causing some debonding. So we switched from the cam to the SMA because of that. So we've got on the frontage roads on State Highway 6 in Bryan, we did a thin SMA as a test section, and it's from State Highway 21 to Old Reliance Road, Martin Luther King. If y'all are driving around town, if you're on that frontage road, that's a thin SMA. We also have a thin PFC. It's on the ramp that goes to the district headquarters southbound. So generally the SMA can be used as an intermediate or surface layer. It's designed again to be tougher, more durable mix. It has really good rut and crack resistance, and I believe right now it's one of our only the Tom mix may, I haven't looked at the spec, have a requirement for the cracking with the overlay tester. It generally has a higher initial cost because of the higher quality materials and binder, and also the use of fibers, or if you use the asphalt rubber. So for production, because of the amount of mineral filler, and this isn't necessarily the thin mix. The thin mix doesn't need as much mineral filler, but the traditional sizes do, so there may require some modifications to your plant. And Mike showed a lot of skid information, so it has a really good surface texture. Part of that gap grading helps us have a good texture on the roadway. But it also makes it a little bit more challenging to compact. And when we first started placing these, I think some contractors had a learning curve to go through how to compact these, but I think probably most of our contractors have now built some of these mixes, and so that's probably not as big of a concern as it was when we first started using these. Now, Mike had a similar slide to mine showing the cost, and the thin SMA, and these are Bryan District prices. It's given us really a better price than a D-mix. So if you're looking at a road, you can't just look at the initial price per ton. You got to really think about, what am I doing with the mix? Can I place it thinner? If I can place it thinner and I can place one of these higher quality mixes, it may be a better bang for the buck. You'll get a longer term high quality mix for a similar price per square yard. So I encourage y'all to, for your own districts, to make up some type of chart like this and look at your prices and think about that when you're doing your mix selection. Because I think sometimes you'll be surprised at the thickness you actually want to put it down. You can actually get a good mix. And like Mike was saying, that they found a lot of benefits to having the higher quality mixes. But then again, you've got to do the prep work, the repairs on the road, and everything else to make these thinner mixes work properly. So just to kind of summarize, the SMA mixes, they offer our best combination of rut and crack resistance. They are a little bit harder to compact than our conventional mixes, and so they'll have to make some changes if your contractors aren't familiar with how to place these. They require good aggregates, the mineral fillers, polymer modified binders. Again, you're going to have the fiber whey pod on your hot mix plant, and if you've been doing PFC, your contractors probably have those now. But I know when we first started using mixes that required fibers, it became a scheduling problem because they would have to rent those whey things to add it to the plant. But now it's a lot more common, so that hasn't been an issue. At least in the Bryan District, hadn't been an issue lately. So if you haven't used these types of mixes, that's something to think about. It may affect your contractors, and they'll have to rent some equipment to produce these mixes. Again, you'll have to have a little bit different compactive effort, and because they are gap graded, you need to be careful if you got a lot of hand work. You don't want to be raking these mixes. You just want to be placing them. And again, it's an excellent surface mix. We have it on Interstate 45. We've done it on some frontage roads. We just placed a section on State Highway 7 in Centerville that has probably about 60% trucks right now, oil field support and base haulers, and about 7,000 ADT, but about 60% of it's trucks. And so that's an area where you might consider it if you have a small town with a lot of heavy traffic. And then again, this is our Interstate 45 mix that we laid this summer, and it's a really good looking mix. It's in Walker County, just north of Huntsville. And that's all I had for the SMA. Oh, and I wanted to thank Robert Lee and Giselle Carrasco. They helped me with some of the slides, with some of the gradation and other things, and I appreciate that. They're in the construction division.